All right, joining us now, Night Nation, on this little extra version of the Knightline podcast. Tonight it is the 12th of October, and today was the day that George O'Leary stepped down from the AD position to keep coaching full-time head football coach at UCF. Joining me on the phone is Brandon Helwig, publisher of UCFsports.com. Brandon, welcome back.
It's great to be here. It's kind of an interesting day. It was a day that we didn't know was going to happen, a few months ago, back when George O'Leary accepted the interim AD position. But past 2 weeks, it kind of seemed like this day was going to happen. Didn't know it happened so soon where he would step away immediately, but I feel like the writing had been on the wall here for at least a few weeks.
I don't think it came to too much of a surprise of anybody. I think it was inevitable to happen. A lot of us said in the beginning that we didn't think that he was really the guy for that job. He didn't seem, when he was talking today in the press conference, he didn't seem that he was too interested in it really after he had experienced it.
Well, I mean, maybe his opinion changed after actually, doing the job. I know, during the, this June-July period when Stansbury abruptly left, unexpectedly left to go to Oregon State, at that point, from what I heard, UCF was, just going to do another national search, to get a new AD in here. But George O'Leary saw the opportunity, thought, might be something he was interested in. I mean, he's always thinking retirement. I mean, he pretty much has admitted the past few years that he, coaches year to year and kind of makes a decision on his status at the end of every season. So I think he saw it as, this is an opportunity, right place, right time, I think was the words that he was using in his introductory press conference. And I think he thought it was a job that, he would like to have. And Dr. Hitt, has pretty much, been on board with O'Leary from day one. And, when O'Leary comes to you and says, give me a shot, that's what Dr. Hitt did. And I think ideally, back then, certainly the intent, I think, and a lot of people at UCF think, is that, you'd be the interim AD, you're not just going to give him the full-time permanent AD title, when he's still the football coach. He's never been an administrator before. You're just going to kind of let it ride and see how it goes. And, if all goes well, maybe this time, maybe October, November, you'd say, we decided, we're going to have George O'Leary be the permanent AD going forward. And I think that would have aligned well with, George O'Leary's preferred succession plan, which would be to have Brent Key be the next head coach of UCF. And they'd kind of, next season we'd see AD O'Leary and head coach Key. But unfortunately, for them, it doesn't look like that's going to happen anymore.
I guess he said during the press conference, I guess he said it about 7 times, that it was totally his decision. Nobody had any other role in it besides he sat down with Dr. Hitt and he decided by himself to step down. Do you think that that's totally true?
Well, he sure repeated it quite a few times. If that was a drinking game, you would have been passed out already. Let's just put it that way. He repeated it several times. Just from things I was hearing, it just kind of seemed like, the wheels were in motion for a national search, and O'Leary did himself say in radio shows and whatnot the past few weeks that, he really disliked the bureaucracy aspect of it and didn't like, he's pretty much said that today. They don't like the kumbaya aspect of it, which, really the role of a football coach and an AD in today's age are totally different. You can't, some of his mannerisms as a drill sergeant type, football coach where it's his way or the highway. And, if you don't put up with it, that's not exactly the kind of skill set that it takes to be an AD. I mean, you gotta, I guess that kumbaya type. I mean, that's honestly in any sort of business setting, you gotta be that type. And it's just, I think those days are long gone of the football coach being the AD, and especially with his personality. I just, in retrospect, you can kind of see why things didn't work out. But you're right. He wanted to make it very clear that he wasn't being forced out, that it was his decision and his decision alone.
I know that there's a lot of fans that are not happy with what's happened this year. We're actually at the halfway point, so this is kind of a good time to have this conversation because the last time we talked to you was, like the week before football season started. So what's your take on what has happened so far in the year and the season for UCF football?
Do we have a couple hours? Geez, where to start? I mean, you knew there was going to be some challenges this season, but I guess you almost kind of believed, honestly, you believe George O'Leary and everything that, he was constantly preaching this spring and season. We'll be a solid team. We'll be a solid team. We're at the position where we, reload and we don't rebuild. And, even before the injuries piled up, I still don't know how good this team is going to be when you go back and look at that FIU game, and that was really before, like I said, the injuries started to pile up. And, one thing O'Leary did that he's never done before is he closed preseason practice. Now, at the time, I was kind of, they tried to use the excuse that, new coordinators or blah, 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 which I didn't buy for a second. I later heard they got tired of people getting out their phones and stuff because they were very paranoid about that. They don't want anyone to have their phones out of practice. And that had been an issue at times. But it wasn't an issue with media or fans, at least the fans that regularly come to practice. That's been more of a problem with, parents of players and visiting recruits and girlfriends of players. There's people that would always be doing it. But I think I kind of, got the vibe that they just were kind of tired of that. And then some of the football staffers got tired of patrolling the sidelines and watching fans and stuff as far as that goes. But then you kind of wonder now that did O'Leary kind of have a sign? Did he kind of feel like it was going to be a rough month? And you're kind of you were there every day, okay, to get interviews and do that kind of stuff during camp, but you couldn't watch practice, and you can kind of talk to people and say, hey, because some people, were allowed to go, or, you kind of, talk to players. You kind of were getting vibes that things weren't looking so hot, but you don't really know. When thinking about practice, I've seen, I can't count how many practices I've been to UCF for the last 10 or 15 years, but it's really hard to kind of judge exactly what happens in practice and say, hey, this is how the season's going to turn out, because, the offense could look good and make the defense look bad. The defense could be really good and making the offense look bad, and the truth is they're both, pretty good. But you kind of wonder if O'Leary had an idea then that things weren't going to go so well this season. We saw in the opening game on the offensive line and the running game, this is non-existent. And, that's obviously been one of just many problems now. And that's kind of, questioning certain decisions to, keep on doing what doesn't work, because it clearly wasn't working for a while. And, of course, losing Justin Holman didn't help at all. I don't think UCF loses the Furman. Obviously, if Justin Holman is still a quarterback for that game, just with the team playing, I still think it might have been a close game, which still wouldn't have been a positive. But I don't think UCF loses that game. But just with everything going on now, it's just clear that the recruiting sanctions are catching up to them. For a few years span, they had 5 less scholarships to give out every year, and the players that they did sign, frankly, they probably missed on some of those guys. They're just, average players or backup type players, and they're not really, O'Leary himself says they lack playmakers and they lack speed. And you look at one position in particular that they really didn't recruit for years, was wide receiver. They had a bunch of receivers. They all kind of came up together through the program, but Josh Reese's, Rennell Hall's, J.J. Wharton's, and then Brashad Perriman joining that mix. They all kind of came up together, and then when everyone graduated, there was nobody left. They didn't recruit wide receivers. There was one year, I think it was 2012, or was it 2013? I have to go back and look. They didn't sign any wide receivers. The entire recruiting class had 0. And in other years, they signed Taylor Oldham here, and some other guys that aren't here in the program anymore. So that kind of catches up to them. So you get into a position where, when you lose Jordan Aikens, who really wasn't a player you really were expecting anyway, he was playing minor league baseball, and just it was kind of the way it happened. It was a surprise that, he quit baseball and came back to UCF. You really weren't expecting him to be part of that mix, but then when everyone graduates, you're kind of left with what you got when you're scrambling to play true freshmen, or you're playing former quarterbacks or walk-ons or what have you. That's kind of what happens, and it all ties in. Recruiting misses, the lack of just signing more players in general, and the fact that they were so top heavy, I guess you could say, in terms of it would have been a lot better if you only graduated two of your secondary starters, or maybe had 2 experienced receivers coming back, and they all left. So you're kind of in a bind there. So I could go on and on, but 0-6 is a shock. And like I said, and as far as the recruiting and all that stuff, maybe that's an issue, but to me that's still not an excuse for losing to Furman, losing to UConn, losing to Tulane, losing to FIU. Those were clearly the 4 easiest games on the 2015 schedule. And there's a lot of issues going on right now, and I really don't know how quickly UCF can dig out of it. I guess the positive is that these young guys, maybe they will be future stars. They're getting valuable experience this year. So, if anything, that's what maybe the bright side is in a season like this, is to get those guys experience. So hopefully it'll pay off, a year or two down the road.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really interested in seeing, and I've been thinking about this for the last few weeks, is I'm interested in what George O'Leary wrote in that envelope that he makes every year, and his prediction of the team. He says he's usually pretty good, about his prediction at the beginning of the season. I guess you usually hear about it at the end of the season. I'm interested definitely in wondering what he actually wrote down. If that's actually something that he does, I don't know.
We're just taking his word. We always just take his word for it. I mean, who knows what he puts in there? I think
it may be a myth,
Yeah, right before the beginning of the season, he kind of put qualifiers on his, will be a solid football team talk that he said. Will be a solid football team. Then I think it was his opening press conference before the FIU game said, if some of these, younger players, rise up, and he kind of was putting a few qualifiers on that statement. So I think he kind of knew. I tried to ask him that today at the press conference. Did he kind of have a feeling? Obviously the injuries did pile up at some point, but I'm not sure if that makes it makes a difference. But I think the signs were already there that it wasn't going to be a good season anyway. Maybe it wouldn't be 0-6. Maybe you'd have a win or two here or there, but you could see this wasn't going to be a championship, caliber team if everybody was healthy in terms of competing. It may not have been a bowl team either. But it kind of seems like he kind of had an idea a little bit, I guess, once camp got over with.
With these young players not being, in the best football shape, I know it takes a few years to get to where you're really, really strong, and that's where those practice squad reps and all that really work wonders for you. But does that say anything about our strength and conditioning team? The injuries piling up. Number one, we normally don't deal with that around here at all. I mean, it's really not been a problem.
It's kind of debatable whether injuries are necessarily a byproduct of poor strength and conditioning. I think strength and conditioning can obviously, the stronger your argument can kind of prevent some. You really have to go back and break down, injuries, what kind of injuries, or just a Holman. It was a contact injury. His hand hit the guy's arm or helmet or something. That had nothing to do with the weight room. And you look at Jordan Akins, he just got nailed. I think the guy's helmet pretty much collided with his knee. There's things like that you just can't prevent. It doesn't matter how strong those guys are or they aren't.
Yeah, and as far as Jordan Akins, unfortunately, I called that a couple weeks before that happened, and I'm sure if anybody has any football knowledge, they knew that guy shouldn't probably be back there doing that if he's our number one.
And George O'Leary
was
saying that. He was saying that in the weeks before. We probably haven't doing too much. We haven't doing too much, and that was the truth. He really was the only. Kind of looks like the only playmaker on offense, and you wanted to have him available to do a lot of different roles, but he's only within his second year playing football. There was a lot of things that you're right. You should found a C.J. Jones or just some other guy to put in that role before it got to that point. Unfortunately, it happened, and there's no going back. And that's a good question. People kind of forgot about him a little bit in terms of asking O'Leary what his status is. Obviously he had the ACL. I'm not sure if he's had surgery or kind of where he is right now.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that. So
yeah, I know it takes usually a few weeks after the injury, let swelling go down before that happens. That's a good, maybe we'll ask that in the next week or so to see what's. Obviously, it's devastating for him, for a guy that is an older guy, and probably his goal, I would think, would be, I don't know what kind of ability he has. Really, he has the frame and body type, but to possibly go pro in another sport. I mean, he's one of the only few players you can see that maybe if he really develops might have a shot, but really kind of feel bad for him.
Oh, I do, absolutely, yeah. It's something that I don't know if I, saw it coming or what, but it was very unfortunate. I said it like the week before, and the week before that, I'm just like, he's going to get hurt back there. This is not good to have him out there doing that. We need to save him for the reps, catching balls and stuff like that. And there are guys that recover from that.
Well, hey, we got a little, I know people might hear this later, but we got a little bit of breaking news here.
Okay.
As Sports Illustrated is reporting that Steve Spurrier is retiring.
Immediately or at the end of the year?
I don't know. Just I mean, I assume by the time I would think people might listen to this over the next day or two. I'm sure whatever will come out by then. But as we're talking here about 9:00 on Monday evening, so that's interesting. It's been a busy news day. I mean, if there's one thing that I don't know if it's bad news for UCF with O'Leary stepping down. I know is it going to be a punchline for some of these national media types. But it's been a really busy sports day, and really O'Leary is probably the least significant of all the stories when you talk about, USC firing, their coach for, alleged drunken behavior, and now maybe that's accurate about Spurrier, and you got Florida's quarterback suspended for a calendar year for some sort of PED abuse.
Wow,
it's just been a wild day. It's been a crazy.
It absolutely has. Yeah, it's one of those days that we look forward to. Unfortunately, that are crazy like that. Because there's a lot to talk about. Yeah, Steve Spurrier, he's getting up there in age as well. I think they're about the same age, right? They've both been coaching forever,
I think Spurrier might be a year or two older, but, both of those guys are around the same age. And obviously, I think a lot of similarities if you look at what South Carolina was before Spurrier arrived. They were, they're a bad team. Or if anything, they were mediocre. Mediocre is probably a good year for South Carolina prior to Spurrier's arrival, and he kind of built them to where they are. And and their fans, I know one word O'Leary is that UCF fans have been spoiled a little bit with the success, and that depending on how you want to interpret those comments, there's a little bit of truth in that. Probably to be worded better. But
absolutely.
When you look at South Carolina, they might be spoiled a little bit into thinking, 10, 11 type, 11-win seasons are the norm for them, when traditionally, they haven't been that. And, I went to that game, obviously a few weeks ago, and as far as SEC, I've been to most SEC, venues now, and it was all right. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not knocking their thing, but when you kind of compare them to other SEC places in terms of campus, the atmosphere, I know for a game against UCF at noon wasn't going to be ideal. But when you look at campus day and everything else, there's a lot more impressive places in South Carolina just in terms of all that stuff. So it's pretty remarkable, I think, what he's accomplished, if that is the case, that he is kind of stepped down.
And honestly, it's remarkable what George O'Leary has accomplished here. I mean, he took this team from the absolute dumps of college football and brought it into the Division I and, really turned it on around here. And
that's really irritating me how, there's some fans out there that, they don't like George O'Leary. That's fine. I mean, George O'Leary, he's a guy that, he's a love him or hate him kind of guy, to be honest, just with his personality and everything. But some people that try to, deflect from his accomplishments to try to say, well, you said this in spite of O'Leary. You got to give the guy a lot of credit for what he's done for the program. Just winning that Fiesta Bowl, getting UCF to the point where, unfortunately things look like they've kind of collapsed this year. But prior to this point, if I don't know if there's going to be a statue one day of George O'Leary, maybe have a little name for something, George O'Leary Field or something. I think it's well deserved.
Absolutely.
And we don't know what's going to happen, after this season. He reiterated several times he can make a coaching decision on what he wants to do after the season. He kind of contradicted himself, like he sort of at the beginning was sort of acting like, you kind of get the vibe that he's probably thinking this is his last year, and then at the end, he's kind of like, hey, I think, I don't want to go out on his illusion and all that stuff. So you kind of think maybe he's giving a vibe that he wants to come back. Really, we don't know right now. If it was a situation where he is going to retire this year, I think it would be great, if it was to be that was announced ahead of time. So the rest of this season, instead of, fans getting all, you've got to go and all this stuff and banners and whatnot, which I really didn't agree with, that it would be more of a celebration of what he's done for the program. People could kind of forget about all the negativity and the losing and just kind of, remember that, like that USF game at the end of the year. Obviously, it's going to be USF's last game. Is the way they're going to win out and go 6-6. But that last game could kind of sort of be like a celebration of Georgia. Someone posted that on the message board today.
Right.
I think that'd be great. I don't know if it would. I just don't think O'Leary would do that, though. I think he doesn't like distractions. He doesn't like attention on him in that regard. So if he does retire, I think he just would retire after when the season is officially over. But if he wasn't going to retire, I think it would be great to do it like that, because I think that would really just change the mood of this season in a hurry. Yeah, it is what it is. UCF isn't, going to have a good year. In fact, God forbid they go 0-12, which looks like more of a possibility now. But if that happened, I think that would really kind of, pick up everybody and say, hey, there's going to be a new coach, new staff in here. Let's celebrate O'Leary's accomplishment to kind of move on. But it'll be interesting if he wants to come back for another year. I think Dr. Hitt would let him have that opportunity, but when you coach your year, that's tough from a recruiting standpoint. And other coaches, he admitted, use that against him. That's just tough because, he's kind of alluded to, you need more talent in here, and that's hard to recruit with when, like I said, you're only pretty much saying you're coaching year to year. They have 4 commits right now. They've had a couple of decommits in the past few weeks, and, with coaching staff and if you're assistant coaches, you're probably looking for other jobs because you still know the long-term status. Even if he does come back, I just think that might be really tough. But he's probably earned the right to at least have that chance. Yeah,
he's definitely earned the right, number one, to turn this situation completely around if he can. I mean, he's definitely earned the right to right the ship, if that's possible. I don't know, like you said, I've already, in the past few weeks, I've said a number of times, I believe it's going to be 0-12. I hope, with my heart of hearts, that it's not going to be 0-12, because that's nothing that a football fan, number one, wants to go through with their team. Number two, it's not something that you want to see your young players go through, but then again, it can be used as ammunition in the years to come for getting better and for those young athletes to remember this season as being 0-12 or whatever it's going to be, and they can use that as a benchmark. We're going to be better. We're going to learn how to win. We're going to, remember how horrible it was that year. We're going to do everything that we possibly can to be better than that.
You know what would be an amazing way to end things, though? I just was thinking about this tonight. And it's like we all know it's going to be a really tough road. You got, the 3 of the best teams in the conference come up next, and you got to go on the road to Tulsa, and they put up all kinds of yards and stuff, and then you got ECU, which maybe it'd take a little step back, but still a good team. They beat Virginia. These are all going to be tough games, all right? But would it be kind of an amazing finish? Let's just say UCF is 0-11, going to see that Thanksgiving game against USF, and USF got a really big victory against Syracuse, just in terms of keeping bowl hopes alive. And for Willie Taggart, at South Florida, he probably needs to make a bowl just to keep his job. And, and let's say UCF is 0-11. Oh, it doesn't really matter what UCF's record is, but if it was 0-11 and USF is 5-6, all right, and they need that win at the end of the year to get to a bowl game, and UCF knocks them off. That's maybe UCF's the only one. Wouldn't that just? I mean, if you're USF in that rivalry, that you couldn't beat them in arguably UCF's worst year ever, and that might be, the difference of not making a bowl and their coach getting fired. That would still be. And if you're a UCF fan, you even though you're not happy with the overall result, you
would eat your heart out.
You would have something in the off season to kind of hang your hat on. So I think that would be, who knows if it'll work out like that. But I just was thinking tonight, what a fun way that would be to end things.
Absolutely, yeah. It would be great to not have, a blowout loss to them like has happened in the years where we weren't on the same level as they were. For years they came in and whooped us. So, yeah, that would be awesome. I think that would probably be maybe a game where the goalposts get ripped down or fans rush the field or something. I don't know what would happen. It would kind of be scary to think about what would happen, but it would be a great way to end it. Nobody wants to go out like that. Is that a thing that George O'Leary, I wonder, thinks about, though? He doesn't want to go out 0-12. I mean, even 0-11, I don't think that he wants to end his career like that. So if the team does, we're already having the year like that, so at the end of this year, does he look back and say, I don't want to go out like this, I want one more year to right the ship? Is that something you think that he thinks about?
It's got to be on his mind. I mean, he likes to talk about the 12 game seasons and week to week and all that stuff, but I mean, it's something he's got to be thinking about right now. And like I said, it probably, may not be a decision he really fully makes. And the thing is, he says he doesn't have any hobbies, and he doesn't. And his hobbies are watching football tape and breaking down practice film and game film and coming up with game plans and stuff. That's what he likes to do, and really the only thing I think he really likes to do. So, it's going to be some soul searching, I'm sure, in the next, month or two, just to see what which route he wants to take. Like I said, this really will be an interesting end of the season. I mean, I know people aren't happy with the way things are going, on the field wise, but in terms of what's going to happen with the future of the program, it's going to be really interesting here. Not just with the hire of AD, but this new AD, whoever it is, he's going to have to be hiring a new coach. That'll be interesting how that works out.
Yeah, well, I'm really not the biggest George O'Leary fan. I don't think it's a huge breaking news to anybody. I've really not been a big supporter of his. I'm a supporter of his teams for sure, and I fully understand what he's done here and fully give him credit for that. But sometimes during his press conferences, one of the things that I really don't like, and I never have liked, and this is one of the reasons why I say I don't really like him, he does not take one bit of, this is my fault, this is coaching. Never does he do that. And that's one of the things that just grinds on me that he doesn't do.
Yeah, well, that thing about O'Leary, and then the thing I love about O'Leary is that you never know what he's going to say, that he's extremely candid, and I love the fact that he trolls the fan base.
Today, when I watched I rushed home from work because I had kept up with it all day on the boards, and I was having conversations with a couple people and all that, but I paid attention. I was at work, but luckily, today I could pay a little bit more attention than I normally do. But when I came home and I watched that press conference, I actually at one point felt like he was being a little bit more of himself, and he was having a little bit more, emotion in the press conference. Yes, he did say a couple things that probably a lot of the fans don't like, but in a way, I know this is weird, but in a way I kind of felt sorry for him because, he's getting older. He's not having a good season. He figured out that he doesn't want to be the AD. He's talked about how he doesn't have any hobbies. I actually felt a little bit sorry for him, and I felt that he was more human in that interview today than he usually is and has been for quite a while. Is that crazy to think that way, or?
I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't sound crazy. The thing that they said you're not exactly a fan, but I like the way that maybe certain things I disagree with. That he maybe calls out certain elements at times. Probably really doesn't do anyone any good. But to me, it's kind of hilarious sometimes the way he calls out fans or other teams or conferences, or just you never know what you're going to get from him, which is kind of refreshing, at least in terms of fans and message boards and all that stuff. There's always something that he says that gets people riled up, which makes it entertaining. It certainly has never been boring. Some of these head coaches just talking coach speak all day long, and you have no idea what they're thinking or what's going on with the team. And to me, if Dogger had said, what kind of coach do you want to see if the time comes when they're looking for a replacement for George O'Leary, I would want someone that at least has some sort of personality, that isn't afraid to tell it like it is, and is not going to be one of those coach speak guys that you get constantly where you're just going to beat your head into a wall. That is just, they talk a lot and just nothing really comes out. You're like, what is he talking about? That would be my number one want in a new coach.
I definitely appreciate Coach O'Leary for the stuff that he's done, and I hope that he has a good way to go out, and I would hate to see him go out on a losing season. I don't agree with the banner thing as well. I kind of had an inkling that something like that was going to happen. It was discussed on the board about a bunch of people putting in money to do something like that. Kyle said this week that he knew about the banner that was going to be flown, didn't agree with it, but, didn't really want to tell his friends that they shouldn't do that. And it was definitely a publicity thing. They got what they were looking for. I was actually, I don't know if you heard this in the podcast, but I was standing with some former players' parents, and they were very upset by that, when they saw that flying over, and I don't think it was totally appropriate. Do you have an opinion on it?
Well, if you feel that way, fine, but to me, it was a shameless publicity stunt for a bar. I was jealous they didn't get the attention that the basement got with the free beer, which the free beer, it's kind of funny, it was. And I think they saw how that got a lot of social media buzz and got picked up nationally, like, oh, that bar, they're getting all that attention. Why don't we do something? Yeah, I don't know if they even, I don't even think I don't know the people that were behind it. I know Kyle on your thing said that, he knows the people personally. I think he kind of gave the opinion that they don't know anything or they're not into football. I don't really want to talk poorly about people, but I just think it was a publicity stunt. That's why I didn't like it. The fact it was a banner, I didn't like it, period. But I think it was pretty clear to see what it was about. It wasn't about, we're upset about UCF football. It wasn't even about that. They just were trying to create some sort of, stink to get some sort of attention to their bar. If they really felt that way, they wouldn't put their bar name on it.
Right, and that's what I was going to say.
That other entity, basement or whatever they call themselves, out there for years, were jealous of that.
Yeah, if it was really about what it was, supposed to be about, they wouldn't have put their name on it. That's what I was going to say, yeah. So, I don't know, man, what we're going to see the rest of the season, but I hope that things get better. Is there anybody that you've seen through all these games that is the real deal, a player particularly that really has a bright future ahead of them, somebody that special throws, special cuts, anything like that?
You see one player have a good game and then they follow up and not have such a hot game. I think Kyle Gibson has showed flashes of being a future star. You'd like to see some of these young linebackers catch on. There's really not a lot of positives. As I say, you go every week and try to get interviews with players, and the only players available for interviews are mostly juniors and seniors, and there's not a lot of guys to talk to, period, and they're not having good seasons, or they've been demoted, and it's just kind of, hard to really, because, with the season, you don't want to, dwell on that with players, and you can only ask so many questions about, how's the mood doing, how's the team doing, what's the mood like, that's just, there's nothing really, and that's tomorrow I'm going back over there for interviews, and it's really tough when weeks like this you can't talk about. And the players, they're sick of it too. They're not happy with everything, and they don't want to be answering questions about the season and the team and all that stuff. So that just makes it really tough. There really hasn't been, frankly, a lot of bright spots, to be honest. If I'm going to be completely frank here.
Thank you very much for joining me tonight and talking to me a little bit. I appreciate it. That everybody really respects your opinion, and thank you so much for the work that you do and the coverage that you do. It's amazing. Your pictures are awesome. It really, of course, helps us out, and we could not do this without you doing what you do. And I greatly appreciate it.
Anytime, I know it's just you tonight, anytime your tricks or whatever, I'm always here.
Maybe during one of those off weeks, we were talking about doing a YouTube thing. I've got everything set, I think, to do a live call-in show. We could probably only do one call at a time, but maybe if you'd want to join us on that thing, that would be awesome.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much, man. I greatly appreciate it.